Welcome to another episode of It's Her Turn. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Dow, and today we're going to focus on fearless living and how do we become the queen of our mind. Now, this is based on my book, Fearless: The Art of Using Anxiety to Your Advantage, that I was going to start sharing a little bit out of the book for those of you if you are challenged with anxiety or fear or worry, feeling struggling with this uncertainty of the times, then this book was written to support you as a woman. It's the only book I believe that's written specifically for women with anxiety. I wrote it a couple years ago based on my sort of lifelong work with fear and anxiety and understanding how it impacted my own life and those that I was working with over the last 35 years. And I really wanted to get this information out that isn't as available around mind, body, spirit, sort of holistic concepts and understandings in science, even the recent research about how do we begin to impact our mental health, our emotional health, our whole well-being from this holistic model. And so that's what this book is really about. And today I wanted to dig in a little bit to the queen archetype, who I assigned and felt like it just fit right away with how do we work with our mind? How do we begin to create change around the way that we think? And how do we start accessing that larger wise mind of our observer or witness consciousness mind? That part of us that can be aware and tap into greater levels of intuition and deeper knowing that for me is an aspect that we speak to of the mind, but it's very much connected with our experience of our bodies, our somatic energy experience, and sensory knowing that we have in the body. So everything I talk about comes back to how do we experience and create change from a place of consciousness and awareness in all of ourselves, right? Mind, body, spirit. So the queen is that part of us, we could say, that has the capacity to help us start to make a difference in learning how to move out of that fearful thinking mind we might call the ego and coming more into that wise mind. And she helps us do that in a lot of different ways. And I speak to it as she, as the archetype, that queen that a lot of us as women can connect to, that sense of that part of us that feels noble and in her dignity and in her power over her territory, you could say. And we're talking about how do we feel that and start to be empowered with the territory of our mind that so much controls how we see ourselves and how we see the world. So the beginning steps are to recognize that how we've been raised as a young woman, girl in a patriarchy, in a cultural experience that has devalued the feminine, which I talk about regularly. Um, how does that impact our sense of our own feminine self, our own sense of our power to be uh, an empowered, strong woman? And what I've seen over the years, not only again personally, but professionally, is that often we get stuck in that princess archetype, right? Like we want to feel royal, we want to feel great about ourselves, but we're still feeling like we're waiting for that approval. We're looking to the father or we're looking to the husband for that sense of, uh, are you enough yet? Are you pleasing? Are you doting on the masculine in your life in order for you to feel like you're allowed to take up space, like you're allowed to speak up? And that's again just comes from this strong history of women being quieted, right? No, you don't get to speak. No, you don't get to talk about business. No, you don't get to have a say about this decision. And so we are claiming that right to speak and be smart and be involved in decision making in our own lives and out in the world more and more as the decades pass. However, we know there is such a strong backlash about that. And it's a very old, we could say almost fear based part of our brain that patriarchy really operates from, where everything is this level of survival, of controlling nature and trying to, control other people and feel a sense of safety, and that we can see in the culture now as the patriarchy is sort of stumbling. The uncertainty is just off the charts right now because we're all trying to find out, well, what's coming, and is it something better or is it worse, or what's going to happen? And because of that, a lot of us, that anxiety that we've lived with for a long time, often being dissociated and disconnected from our voice, our truth, our power, we have stayed stuck in this princess place. Even if you're a woman who is not in relationship with men, if that's not your thing, you might still find that you're either in your own personal experience, you're kind of internally looking to your inner masculine to be in charge, or we again are caught in that dynamic either with our parent or a father figure or a boss or some kind of authority that we're waiting and trying to please in order to be kind of given permission to become the queen. And what we want to do in this model of fearless living is to recognize our queen. She is already here. She has been here when we were born. She has been waiting to step out and into her full expression. And so when we become conscious of that part of us, then we can be like, oh, yeah, here she is. I can tap into her, and I can lose it, but I can come back and practice tapping into her. So, how do we connect with the queen? Her first steps are helping us to recognize our absolutely inherent worth and value as a woman and as a human being. No matter where we are or what we've been struggling with or what life has looked like out in the world, right? If we haven't been following the, did you get married? Did you have kids? Do you have a business? Do you, have this kind of look? Do you, subscribe to the patriarchal versions of what a woman should look like? You know, Outside of all of that, we have this queen who knows who she is. She knows she is the sovereign being who holds that nobility and sense of dignity about who she is. And we get to start reconnecting with her. And often the ways we do that is if there are some ways in our family, if there's cultural connections with that, either through family storytelling or your culture and what you experience with rituals or um, how women were perhaps admired in certain ways, right? So you could go into even spirituality, where in certain religions women are considered, there's these moments of, oh, there's, the Mother Mary, even though we have a lot of also oppressive ideas about women, and they're not mentioned in lots of other areas of certain religions, right? So we can start to search and know, in Judaism, lots of amazing women in that history that have been acknowledged, and a lot of women are doing the work now to bring those women back to the front to be acknowledged and recognized as these saints or as these teachers and powerful, women affecting history throughout time. And so how can we tap into that just in our own personal self is recognizing where that might show up in your life, has been part of your history, or your own, women in your family. How can you connect with that and recognize the strengths and the qualities that you've admired in women in your lineage? And we can also even look to media, because media gives us a sense of these images or characters in movies or books that we can really connect to, right? I remember when Katniss, the Hunger Games came out, and she became this automatic experience of this archetype of women being this amazing fighter, right? She was smart and she was capable, and she, had her own heroine's journey that she went through in that movie. And it was such a strong reaction of people being, women and young girls being very connected to that. I read recently how archery became like incredibly more powerful and common. Girls were seeking out to do archery because of that movie. So that's the power of these images, but that's also what they are as a part of this archetype. So when we think about how do we connect with our sense of self-worth, and how would we imagine moving from that princess archetype into that queen? And very simple, I give lots of different practices in the book, but one of the practices I talk about that's very simple is simply standing as a queen. So when we take our posture and we purposely begin to open our body and our structure of our where our shoulders are sitting, how we're holding our head, how we begin to embody that experience of being the queen, is actually a very powerful way to tap into her. We know I think this research was probably about maybe even 15 years ago, but it's become more popular because it says that when, people who were being studied, their sense of mood and their sense of self, their reflection of their own abilities shifted based on their posture. So we know this, not that it isn't true before science says it is, but it's something that helps us. It helps our left brain thinking mind, because that's what we want to activate, is this, prefrontal cortex of what's possible if I begin to use this executive functioning to help me, versus staying stuck in the back of our fear brain, reptilian brain, that gets triggered all the time. Because like we talked about, that's what's operating. That's very much what our system is about, is fear-based culture, keeping us all uncertain and scared, and like, do we fit in? Will we succeed? Will we be okay? And because the way there's so much bias and there's so much inequity, it really perpetuates the level of fear based living that we get stuck in. So, what we're looking at is, how do we connect with fearlessness? How do we connect with how we can feel powerful no matter where our life is, and know that we can tap into this queen who helps us? So, let's do it for a minute. Let's imagine that and if you have the opportunity to actually stand and really exaggerate that posture, like bring those arms back maybe, and strengthen those shoulders and puff up the chest, and have that head cocked in such a way that it's sort of like, yes, I am the queen. I am giving you my attention at this moment, or not, you know. um, but I'm letting you know that I know that I am in charge, right? I'm in charge here in this domain of my life. And I'm not waiting for your permission. I'm not waiting for your reflection that I'm enough. I'm stepping into it from an embodied experience of, oh, this is my life. And no matter how challenging things get, I am still the queen. I still have an ability to make choices. And that choice helps me feel responsible, capable, and able to face whatever comes. And believe me, I know that things can get pretty dire. There was points in my divorce. Oh man, yeah, there was this one place that it was bad. There was a lot of fear. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to hold on to this house that my father had helped me get. Um, all my money had gotten taken out by my husband, and I had two small children to take care of. And I just went into a bit of panic, but then I was like, okay, what are your choices right now? Like, this is scary, and I want to fall apart, and I want to not have to make any decisions, but I have to be the queen here. I have to step it up. I have to take care of myself and my children so that we can get through this situation. And so I did. I figured out how could we get some support so we had enough food on the table? How could we get insurance so my kids were covered? How could we find a roommate who could help us pay the rent in the midst of this total crazy time that I wasn't sure, like, were we going to end up, on the streets? And it was one of many times that I've been in a place like that, whether it's economically or just emotionally caught in that fear thinking, and I was able to find that inner queen, that part that says, "All right, let's assess the situation. Let's figure out our choices and let's see what we need to do to take care of, to honor, to protect ourselves and our family," right? So it comes at those times. Sometimes I find that it can be actually it can clear the cobwebs of all the things we worry about on a day-to-day basis, and it helps us really get to what's the most important thing. And if you think of a queen running her kingdom, um, whether she's with a king or not, she's being able to prioritize. She's being able to say, I will figure out what I need, what support I need, what resources I need, so that I can make a decision here that will take the next step. I don't need to know the 10th step down the road. I just need to know the first step. And sometimes that is something we lose when we're in that fearful thinking. We're just scatterbrained and overwhelmed, and we are not able to bring that executive functioning. So here's another tool. When we have this posture of the queen, we are embodying a level of confidence and nobility. We also want to support our brain to come back online. So simply holding our hand, energetically speaking, like, or physically, holding our hand on our forehead helps activate and support the prefrontal cortex to come back online. And sometimes we do this, right, when we're really nervous or upset. We're like, "Oh my gosh," right? It's like this, you know, subconscious knowing and wisdom that we have, like, I just put my hand on my forehead. And this is how we can come back into the moment. We activate this part of our brain, the thinking high executive functioning brain, that can help us make decisions. Because when we make decisions from our fear based reptilian brain, we're in survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we're so at a fear based level of feeling and living that it's often hard to even just calm the body from that fight or flight mode. And then our thinking isn't able to be as clear. And we might make a decision out of that fear that may not be the best for us. And so, how we support right now the queen of the mind, what we're talking about today, is sort of this physiological embodied activation of that queen archetype in our bodies through our posture and through that support of our prefrontal cortex coming back online. And when we're here in this focus, we really want to come back to what's happening right now. What time is it? What day is it? Where am I? What's going on? What's the most important thing right now? We really want to get back down to the basics in any given situation, but especially when we're in a bit of crisis and fear. And this helps us between the posture and the bringing that part online. And then we breathe. And through that breathing, we are coming back to being more in that wise mind. And when we're in the wise mind, we are aligned with that queen. We are connected with that inner queen who helps us then begin to do some further work when we're not in crisis on, boy, what are the beliefs that are in the way for me? And I'll talk more about that next week on the next episode, so that we can keep looking at what are the ways that we impact and create fearless living, where we're just, fear is going to be there because we are in this mortal body and we're going to die someday. So there's just a level of fear that's going to just be there. But we don't want to live so overrun with fear that we're not present, we're not feeling capable as that queen to make good decisions. We don't have that connection. We want to stay connected to that sense of my value, my worth, your value, your worth as a human being, as a woman. And then we get to look at the next steps of supporting that living with kind of cleaning house, we could say, right? Cleaning house with the beliefs that we've taken on and understood and believed to be true that may not be so true for us. They may never have served us really that well. So we're going to have an opportunity to work on that. So I hope this felt supportive and helpful for you. Again, if you want to get the book, it's a really helpful guide called Fear Less: The Art of Using Anxiety to Your Advantage. And you can get it at a local bookstore. Great, would be great. You might have to let them know to go order it. They can find it. It's written by me, Dr. Kate Dow. Morgan James currently was my publisher. And there's just tons of tools and teachings and practices. Because this idea of making change happen in our life, it takes practice. It's not a one and done, oh, I'm transformed, I'm all healed. That's not my experience. But we can make incredible, changes and steps and places where we really can become the you want to be. I remember imagining when all that stuff was happening in the middle of my divorce and things were really, really crazy. And I was like, how do I want my life to be? Oh, I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel capable. I want to have relationships that are nurturing and nourishing and supportive. I want to know how to be there and care about myself. I want to really know and feel good and value myself. Right? All these things that I hadn't actually learned, and I hadn't received that for different reasons in my family and in my lineage. And so these are the possibilities. So I hope this was giving you a little opportunity, a little chunk of wisdom to chew on and see how it might be supportive for you. Please know that if you're interested in learning more, I do have a Facebook group that is private called Fearless Feminine Wisdom. And you can find me on Facebook at Kate Dow, and my business page is Dr. Kate Dow. And it just I try and post about my podcast. So if people have input, if you want to share, if you have questions, if you have things you want me to address in the next episode, that's what that Facebook page is, Dr. Kate Dow. All right. So this is the time that I remind you that it's your turn to find your voice, own your truth, and claim your power. I'll see you soon. And if you feel called to subscribe or leave me a review, I would love that. Share it with friends you think might benefit. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.